Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on smartifying your candidate screening, adapt for hiring in and after the pandemic. My name is Adarsh Sudhindra. I'm the Vice President of Growth and Strategy at Excelsoft Technologies. We have Ellen Cattleman, who is our guest speaker for this session. Ellen is an independent advisor and consultant. She is the former Assistant Commissioner at the Department of Civil Service, New York State. She comes with over 30 years of industry experience in IT leadership. Welcome, Ellen.
Thanks, Adarsh, and it's good to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be talking a little bit today about the challenges of hiring, both now and because of COVID and in general. And we'll get started in a second. But I think that what I'm trying to bring to you today is a combination of my personal experience as a person in civil service and government, as well as the private sector, where we have different challenges but similar challenges. And I think my IT background helps me come up with some solutions as well as some of the challenges we're all facing. So if we can move along.
Yes. So we'll get started. So Ellen, what do you think are some of the challenges that recruiters today face with candidate screening and ranking, especially in the government sector for government jobs?
So I think everyone would say hiring is a challenge in general. We always have many challenges that we can identify for hiring, and we're going to talk about just a few of them today. Pre-COVID, we had our challenges, and COVID has just exacerbated them all for the hiring managers as well as HR departments. In government specifically, it just takes too long. There have been studies done that show that it takes more than 3 times to hire a candidate in government than it does in the private sector. And the reality is you lose your best candidates during that hiring time. So we want to make sure we know we have to meet the merit and fitness rules of civil service in order to hire the best candidates. And doesn't everybody want to hire the best candidates? Right now, we have an abundance of riches. We have many recently unemployed people who view government jobs as a very reliable and stable job. So we have so many candidates, especially for entry-level positions. But also due to COVID, we can't use our typical examination process. We can't bring large groups of people into large public spaces and test them right then and there for their knowledge and abilities, right? So we have to make sure we have other tools available. Some of the other tools we might use an interview system. We might use video interviews and phone interviews. But you can't do that for large candidate pools, which is always a challenge for government. So we can ask people to send us their resumes, and we can ask them to fill out applications, and we can ask them to send those in. But manual processing is going to take a very long time when you have hundreds or even thousands of resumes. We have some entry-level jobs that I've seen where we get 10,000 applications. You cannot go through those manually and be efficient and get to the best candidates. Plus, if you have lots of people reviewing those applications, how much consistency can you possibly have? Yes, you can have checklists and you can have people saying, yes, they meet, but everybody's interpretation is going to be different. So some people maybe have built systems that look at keyword searches in resumes, and that's great, except how effective is that? And how many candidates have learned that game? When you look at a resume, when you look at a posting, if I'm looking at a posting and I'm applying for that posting, I am going to put all the keywords from your posting into my resume. And you're going to pick me as a top candidate whether I'm there or not. And finally, one of our biggest challenges today with looking at resumes and applications is candidates have been known to stretch the truth somewhat. In various studies that I've seen, between 50 and 100% of the resumes and applications overstate experience and qualifications. So the challenge we have is, how do we evaluate many, many, many people at the same time, consistently, with validity that they actually meet the qualifications for the job, and that the information that they're providing is honest. So when we look at these challenges, let's move on to the next slide. The way I view them is I bucket the challenges into two areas. How do we improve efficiency? How do we get those candidates picked in less than 3 to 4 months? We need to get quicker. So we need to improve our efficiency. And then we need to improve the validity to make sure that the candidate is the best candidate for the job and that the information they're providing us is actually the information that talks to their background. So we're going to talk to these today in two different buckets: efficiency and validation, or efficiency and effectiveness. There's many different ways to say these, but I think you understand. Efficiency and validation is where we're heading from here.
Thanks, Ellen. So those were some of the challenges. Now, what are some of the solutions that can help us address these challenges?
So based on what we've already talked about, I just want to get us onto the same page. We talked about looking at resumes or job applications, and sometimes these can be referred to as training and experience or education and experience. But I just want to make sure when we talk about that, we're all on the same page as to what we're evaluating and how we're evaluating it. So let's go to the next slide and take a look at what's typically on an application or a resume review process. We collect information such as education, experience, certifications, any other training, extras. You've all seen this stuff on a resume or on an application. But this is what we're talking about capturing when we talk about capturing a training and experience assessment. And what's important is that we determine before we ask the candidates for information, what's important for this job. And then when we look at the candidates' information, how do we evaluate them against the job requirements? So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about a T&E assessment, which is where we're going to spend the majority of our time for the rest of this webinar.
So interesting point you made about the T&D type of tests. Now, how can these T&D type of tests help with the efficiency in the hiring process?
So we talked about if we do this manually, right? If we look at 1,000 resumes manually or just with a keyword search, we don't have an efficient and effective way to do that. But let's talk about some really good ways that we can improve our speed for both development of the questionnaires as well as the scoring and evaluation of the questionnaires. I'm a big proponent of doing something once and reusing it a whole lot. So if we create a questionnaire once and we score it many different ways, that creates a whole lot of efficiency for both the creator of the questionnaire as well as the person who's applying for positions. So if I have a couple of different job openings in biology, I have an entry-level biologist and I have a mid-level biologist, I can do one questionnaire and I can score it differently. So what's important for the entry level? Education is really important on the entry level side. I want someone who's got a biology degree. Do I expect them to have a lot of experience? No. But if I'm hiring mid-level, I might take that same questionnaire and score it differently. The candidate can apply once, but we can score it twice if we have a system that allows us to do that. The same thing is for overlapping. In my experience, we've done an entry-level position where we know we want a college degree and we want certain credits. And you create one questionnaire where you can hire for all of your entry-level professional positions, but just use one questionnaire, and one person can apply for entry-level HR, entry-level finance, entry-level biology, entry-level social worker, entry-level, and depending on what the position is, you can score it differently. And this becomes very effective for hiring large groups of people. Let's go on to another efficiency that I see. Using templates is critical. I hate redoing things. Once you create something and it's good, use it over and over again. How many different ways do you need to ask the question of what type of degree do you have? You need to ask the question of what degree do you have? When did you get it? How? What is it in? You don't need to ask it 20 different ways. So you don't need 20 different people creating that question. And if you put together a bunch of those questions, then you have a template that you can use. The other thing I would suggest in this respect, in terms of the hiring process, is once you develop that questionnaire, if you have hard to fill or entry level positions, keep it open, right? So keep the questionnaire available so that if I'm graduating in June, I can take the questionnaire in May, and you're getting people who are right there ready to take the new job for that entry level position. If you open that questionnaire once every 2 to 3 years, you're missing people. So you're missing people and they're not getting to apply exactly when they need to apply. Also, how often do you go find a candidate on your list that you want to hire and they've already accepted another job?
Mhm.
You know, 9 months into the process, a year and a half into the process, your list is not fresh anymore. So allow for renewal of those applications. Allow candidates to come in every year and say, I'm still interested. I want to update my information because I've just gotten these 3 more credits or I've just gotten this certification. But keep it open and allow for a renewal period and for candidates to fall off the list. Okay, and what if also you had a system that eliminated all the back and forth with a candidate? So I apply for a job and I say that I have 20 credits in something, and then you send me an email telling me that you need my transcript to prove it, and then I say I have a certification, and you send me an email saying you need my certification, or I'm a veteran claiming veterans credits. Do all of it up front. Get all the information you need right up front by enabling people to do uploading of documents right within the application process. So let's just quickly summarize a few efficiency options, right? Do it once, use it many times. Do it once, score it many times. Eliminate the back and forth. Those are just really easy things that would help you improve the speed with which you can hire your prospective employees.
Yeah, so we spoke about efficiency and how the T&D type of tests can, bring in significant amount of efficiency into the overall hiring process. What are some ideas for increasing the validity? Validity is important as well. So validity in the selection process when you're using the T&D type of tests.
So we know that in government especially, we have to rank candidates. It's very important. We can't hire without ranking them. There are laws in government that stipulate exactly how we have to do the hiring process. In some organizations, there's a rule of X, I'll call it, a rule of 3, 5, or X, where you must pick from the top number of candidates, 3, 5, 10, whatever. Even professionals we have to test, we have to evaluate, because we're looking not just for the smartest and the brightest, we're looking for the best fit. So I've seen where we have to rank physicians, doctors. Now, we don't have to test doctors. They've already been certified. They've already gone through their testing. They've already gone through that. However, in terms of best fit, we can rank doctors because we can say that a pediatrician, for example, would be better in a daycare environment than a brain surgeon or a geriatrician. So there are ways to rank even professionals to make sure that they are the best fit. The other side of that is getting the valid data from the candidates. As we talked about, candidates have been known to stretch the truth. So we're going to talk about some strategies for how to do that, but the key is get data from the candidates. Don't ask for their opinions. Get data from them and get it in such a way that you can validate it. So let's talk about some best practices that help us do that. The first thing is we want to discourage overstatement. How might we do that? First of all, I know, it's like putting the fine print onto a purchase where you say, yeah, I read all the fine print. But candidates should attest to the truth. They should attest and say that they are not submitting any lies and that they understand that if they are found to be lying, they will immediately lose their job. Will it stop anyone? Maybe not, but it's still a good practice. Require documentation. So if you're asking for credits and you ask for the transcript at the same time, who's going to lie about the credits? Because I have to show you the proof. So if I have to show you the proof, I'm way less likely to stretch it. Plus, you do have a way to, even if you never look at it, the candidate is less likely to stress it, but you also do have a way to validate when you're down to your final candidates and you want to look through the details. you have something to look at. Another thing to do is to require elaboration. What do I mean by that? If you ask a candidate, I'll give you an example of something happened to me in the hiring process. I was once hiring candidates and I had a whole bunch of resumes, and I had a resume that indicated that someone had done a fit gap analysis. And during the interview, I was able to ask the candidate, so tell me about your experience doing a fit gap analysis. And they said to me, what is a fit gap analysis? And that said to me that their resume was not exactly being honest with me. Now, that was in a personal interview. So what can we do on a form and an application? We can ask for descriptions, not long descriptions, but enough descriptions to give us an idea that the person actually understands the question and understands the skill that we're looking for. Those are best practices to begin with. The next best practice is to collect data from the candidates. We already talked a little bit about this, but rather than ask a candidate, how much experience do you have in this area? 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 7. Those are common ways we ask. Ask them for their dates of experiences. So you get a date, a begin date, and an end date. And then you can determine what's valuable, what's not valuable, how do you evaluate that. The same should be for certification, for education. Anytime you can get data and dates, you can then use it to come up with the best candidate, to come up with a scoring plan that allows you to really evaluate a candidate's fit for the job. Let's go back to the slide that we saw earlier where we talked about the application and the resume and what's on them. So now the only difference here is, remember we looked at this chart and we're going to determine best fit. When we look at someone's education, we might look at the dates of education and say, we're looking for someone who has recent experience or recent education or a recent certification. We might weight different areas. We talked about that earlier, that if I'm hiring an entry level, I'm really looking at education. I might be looking at certifications, and I'm minimally weighting experience. Whereas if I'm hiring a seasoned pro, I'm going to weight their experience big time. But what I'm also going to look at in their experience is, what is your experience? Where did you get your experience? How long did you have that experience? And of course, always, what are the reasons for leaving? In the physician position we talked about earlier, what if I have 2 pediatricians who are applying for the job? And one of them worked previously in a daycare environment, and one of them worked in private practice. Would I view the pediatrician who worked in a daycare environment as a better fit than the one who worked in private practice? It depends, but probably. So again, a system that enables you to define what best fit is and then evaluate against best fit is really valuable.
So there you go. The T&D type of tests help you increase efficiency in your hiring recruitment process. They help you better validate the data that you capture from your candidates. Can we talk about a few examples around these, Ellen?
Sure. So one of my favorite examples to talk about is an example that comes from my experience. In my profession, I have very often applied for positions at maybe some of your agencies, some of your companies, because I like to look at the application process. And I'll never forget, in one of them, it asked me about my SharePoint experience, and it asked me, how many years of SharePoint administration do you have? And I said I had 3 to 5, and that was absolutely honest. But my 3 to 5 years of SharePoint experience was in the year 2000, I think. So if you were hiring me as a SharePoint administrator today, I don't think you'd be interested in my SharePoint administration experience from 2000. Yes, I might be better than someone who has no SharePoint administration experience, but boy, I would hate to hire me as a SharePoint administrator right now if I have candidates who have current experience. So if you have a system that allows you to look at that, we look at data recency. So in this example that you're seeing here, think of me as Tom. Angie and Tom both have lots of years of SharePoint experience, but Angie's is much more recent, and she's more recently certified. And if we have a system that allows us to, we can actually differentiate these two candidates automatically. We don't have to have someone read it through, do the math, do the calculations. You have a system that will automatically say, Tom's not a great candidate. He hasn't been doing it for a while. We want someone who's got current, more recent experience. In another example, another way that candidates sometimes stretch their truth is they sometimes have multiple experiences overlapping.
Mm-hmm.
So in this example here, we're showing that Alan has multiple experiences as a project manager, and he's claiming 13, he might claim to have 13 years of experience, and he managed to get those 13 years of experience in 6 years. Now, maybe in this situation, that's not important, but when you're talking about 5 years of experience over a year and a half, that might become very relevant to you, that someone doesn't have the exact, and you can decide that. If you have a system that looks at overlap and determines overlap, then you can decide if that's important or not. And so, again, we're looking at data. Instead of asking how much experience do you have, 13 years, we're asking for dates, and we, using a system, can determine, okay, based on those dates and the overlap, the continuity, it's 6 years of experience. And it's fabulous to have a system that'll show you that. So let's move on to the next example, which I'm going to really, really get into the weeds now, folks. So I'm going to ask you to stay with me, and I'm going to try and do this slowly. But I like to use this example because I think it really shows the power of validating candidates for the job. In this example, we have, let's say we're looking for a food service worker. So some of the tasks a food service worker might work on are helping the cook with food preparation, creating simple foods, or working the line, right? And so typically you would ask the candidate, did you do that? Yes or no? Now what I'm suggesting you ask them is, where did you do it? Right? Because is the environment comparable? And if you look at the lists of what's included in that drop down, you could see that, working in a hospital and working in a diner and working in fast food, those are different experiences. Which job did you have it? Who was your supervisor? Describe it. Those 3 areas really work towards validating your information. So before you say that I did help the cook with food preparation, you better be prepared to tell me who your supervisor is and to describe what you did. And those 3 things, we believe, helps you validate. Plus, you have to say which job you did it at. So we're not asking you if you did it for 5 years. You got to prove it by showing me which job you did it at and for how long. And we're going to use this, we're going to take this to the next degree. Okay, I'm going to really go down into the weeds now with the next slide, and I don't want to scare you, but here it is. So we looked if we look at the top box there, the tasks, the environment, and the duration, each of those can be weighted based on the job. So I am hiring a cafeteria worker to work in a hospital, and it's really important to me that they are good at working the line and serving customers. So I'm going to weight serving customers as more important than helping the cooks or doing simple food prep. That's the first set of columns. The second set of columns, the environment. It's really important to me that you've worked a line in an institutional type place, hospital, school setting. If you did it in a fine restaurant, it's a very different experience. And I'm going to weight your responses that way. And similarly, I want you to have some real experience. So less than a year, you're not going to get any credit for that. If you have 1 to 3 years, it's good. If you have 3 to 5 years, it's even better. Now, here's where the real value comes in. A candidate on the other side comes in and fills out the questionnaire. And they say that they worked as a cook in food, helped to cook in food prep for less than a year. They say they created simple food items in a school for 4 years. And by the way that we're getting less than a year or 4 years or 3+ years is from the dates they've given us, not because they're claiming that. Mm-hmm. And now we have a system that can say right away, based on what information you've given me, based on the weight and the importance I've given to each of those items, what is your score? And right now, candidate 1 gets 11 points as soon as they press submit. So imagine if you have 1,000 candidates that during the course of a weekend goes in and fills this out At the end of the weekend, you have the point values for your 1,000 candidates because the system is able to do these calculations for you. Now, these calculations are all, I mean, we can do them all in Excel and we can do them all pretty quickly, but it certainly helps to have a system that will do this for you.
Absolutely.
Now, imagine if you could take it just one step further, okay? Just one little step further. Imagine every field you can say how important it is and if there's a maximum number of points for a field. Imagine if you take the whole section, let's take an education section. Well, I don't care if you have 10 degrees or 5 degrees, you're only going to get a certain amount of points for degrees no matter how many you have. And I'm only going to give you a certain value of points for those degrees if they were in the last 5 years. And then I'm going to group them all together. Imagine if you could do it at all these different levels and all these point counts, and you set it up once, and then it's automatically scored. Now, this is something that we believe Smart Eval can provide for you. So this is where we get into a little bit of a product information. We believe that these are all great tools to be able to provide your HR departments so that you can quickly and efficiently and also with validity evaluate your candidates.
Awesome. Those are some really interesting strategies that you highlighted. So I'll be careful. I would think twice before I overstate my qualifications on my profile going forward. What are some of the key takeaways for the HR professionals who are watching this video, the personal assessment people, recruitment people? So the key takeaways from you, Ellen.
So there's some bottom line stuff, and we haven't talked about this at all, but now is the time to move from paper and pencil to online testing. You know, many of you may find that you are being allocated some funding during this time of crisis, during this time of hiring crises, and you've put off moving from paper and pencil to online for years because you couldn't get the funding or you didn't have the resources to do it. Now is the time, because we are never going to go back to the way we were able to congregate. We're going to have all different rules and regulations in place for the foreseeable future about how we congregate. So consider making your move right now. If you need to do classic exams, find a partner to enable remote proctoring, because that's the only way you can ensure that these high-stakes exams are properly administered. And by the way, ExcelSoft has a product for that as well, but we're not going to talk about that today. But we think the real bottom line is that you need to consider using T&E exams more. But you have to do them in a way that they are effective and they get you valid candidates. So use your attestation, enable upload of documentation, use and reuse your questionnaires many times over by enabling varying scoring, and let the system do the calculations for you so that you can turn these around quickly, efficiency, and with great integrity.
So thank you, Ellen. That was a really informative session. You gave us a lot of tips and strategies on improving the hiring process, making it more efficient, looking for valid data. Smart Eval that Ellen mentioned is ExcelSoft's product. It's an intelligent evaluation platform that enables screening, evaluation, and ranking of a large number of job applications with the highest accuracy. You can check out Smart Eval on the website of ExcelSoft. You could reach out to the email address on your screen for more information on the product. And ExcelSoft, we are an education technology company. We have a strong focus on building digital learning and assessment products. We've been around for over 20 years now. Do check us out on our website, www.excelsoftcorp.com.